There's a strange kind of silence that follows the Empath Chosen One. It's not the silence of peace. It's the silence of being unseen, unheard, and profoundly misunderstood. We walk through this world with hearts wide open, tuned into frequencies no one else seems to notice. We carry the weight of unspoken truths, the invisible wounds others bury so deeply even they forget they're there. And yet, somehow, we're the ones who always feel like we don't belong, like we're too much, too intense, too sensitive, too deep. But let me tell you something, what the world calls too much is often just truth that hasn't been welcomed yet. And that's why we're misunderstood. That's why we walk alone. That's why our love is rarely recognized in time. You ever notice how you can be in a room full of people and still feel like no one sees you? Not the version of you that smiles and nods and plays the part, but the you beneath the surface. The one who hears what people don't say. The one who picks up on every shift in tone, every flicker in someone's eyes. The one who knows when someone's hurting, even when they swear they're fine. That's the curse, to see people more clearly than they see themselves, and yet never feel truly seen in return. That's why the Empath Chosen One is always misunderstood. We don't just communicate with words, we communicate with energy. We don't just react to what people do, we respond to what they feel. And that terrifies people, because when you're able to see through the mask, people either open up or they run. When you mirror back someone's unhealed wounds, they either lean in or they lash out. And too often, they choose the latter, not because we've done something wrong, but because the truth we reflect is too much for unready eyes. We become mirrors people don't want to look into, and that's when they label us dramatic, overly emotional, complicated, intense, hard to handle. But let's be honest, what they're really saying is, you make me feel things I've spent my whole life avoiding, and so they pull away. They blame us for the discomfort we never intended to cause. They say we're the problem, when all we ever did was feel them too deeply. But we don't stop loving.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
That's the thing about us. We love even when it hurts. We stay even when we're not understood. We give even when it empties us. Because we believe people can change. We believe love can reach them. We believe if we just hold on a little longer, they'll finally see us for who we are. But here's the painful reality. Some people won't. Not until we're gone, because the truth is most people don't recognize the value of the Empath Chosen One until it's too late. Until the phone goes silent and the energy they once fed on disappears. Until the unconditional love they took for granted isn't there anymore. Until they realize the peace they felt in our presence wasn't coming from them. It was us. We were the calm in their chaos. We were the clarity in their confusion. We were the softness they didn't know they needed, but by the time they realize it, we've already walked away. Not out of bitterness, not out of revenge, but out of necessity. Because even the strongest empath reaches a breaking point. Even the ones who carry the world eventually collapse under the weight of being unseen. And that's where our power begins to shift. You see, being misunderstood isn't the end of our story. It's the beginning of our awakening. It's the moment we stop trying to fit into places that were never designed to hold us. It's the moment we stop bending ourselves into fragments to make others comfortable. It's the moment we stop chasing validation from people who can't even validate themselves. Something changes in us. We stop explaining our depth. We stop apologizing for our sensitivity. We stop watering ourselves down to be digestible. Instead, we rise, we reclaim, we remember who we are. Have you ever asked yourself this? What would my life look like if I stopped needing to be understood and started choosing to understand myself? What if the very thing we've been searching for in others, acceptance, belonging, recognition, has to begin inside us first? What if being misunderstood isn't a curse but a compass pointing us back to our own truth? Because when we finally see ourselves clearly, something incredible happens. We stop needing others to see us. We become the validation. We become the anchor. We become the love we kept giving away, hoping someone would return it. And from that place, everything changes. We start creating boundaries, not walls. We start protecting our energy, not out of fear, but out of reverence. We start loving people without losing ourselves in their chaos. And most importantly, we stop waiting for the world to understand us before we start living fully. That's when our mission begins. The Empath Chosen One isn't here to be understood. We're here to awaken. We're here to feel what others can't, to see what others won't, to hold space when the world runs, to speak truth when silence is easier, to love even when it's not returned, and to walk away when our soul says it's time, even if no one understands why. And yes, it hurts. It hurts to be the one who always gives more. It hurts to feel so deeply in a world that numbs. It hurts to carry wisdom that others aren't ready to receive. But that pain is shaping you. That pain is sharpening your vision. That pain is preparing you to lead, to teach, to heal, not from theory, but from experience. Because the world doesn't need more noise, it needs more depth. It needs the ones who have walked through fire and still choose softness. It needs the ones who have been broken and still choose to love. It needs the ones who have been misunderstood and still choose to understand. So I ask you now, what if being misunderstood was never a mistake? What if it was your initiation? What if the reason they couldn't see you was because you were never meant to be seen by eyes that still refuse to look within? You are not too much. You are not too sensitive. You are not too deep. You are exactly who you were meant to be. And the ones who are meant to walk with you, they won't just see you. They'll recognize you. They'll feel your energy like a home they almost forgot. They'll meet you not with fear but with reverence. But until then, your job is not to shrink. Your job is not to wait. Your job is to shine even in the dark. Your job is to heal even when no one claps for it. Your job is to feel even when the world tells you to numb. Because the Empath Chosen One is not here to blend in. We're here to wake the world up, one broken heart, one deep truth, one misunderstood moment at a time. You know what's wild? Most people will never understand the weight of what we carry, not because it's invisible, but because it's unspoken. The Empath Chosen One is like the emotional janitor of the soul realm. We walk into a room and instantly we're cleaning up energy, without being asked, without being thanked, without anyone even noticing the mess was there to begin with. We don't carry what's obvious, we carry what's avoided. You ever sit with someone and feel like you're holding a container full of their pain, even though they're smiling and talking about the weather? Yeah. That's the invisible burden. We take in the tension people don't name. We absorb the grief they've masked with laughter. We feel the rage they've shoved so deep even they don't know it's there anymore. And we carry it, not because we want to, but because our soul is tuned to the frequencies others ignore. That's why people misunderstand us. They think we're reacting to nothing. They think we're being too sensitive or too emotional. But what they don't see is that we're reacting to everything, just not the surface level noise they're used to. We're responding to the suppressed, the hidden, the denied. We're communicating with the parts of them they've silenced, the parts they haven't had the courage to face. And here's the kicker: they often resent us for it. Because when you feel what someone's hiding, you're holding a mirror they didn't ask for. You're showing them what they've spent years building walls around. And they don't know what to do with that, so they call you intense. They say you're too much. They say you're making things up. But deep down, your presence makes them feel exposed. Not because you're trying to, but because your ego tries to bury. That's why your silence makes people uncomfortable. That's why your presence shifts the room. That's why people feel off around you and they don't know why. You're not just another person, you're a frequency. And the higher your vibration, the more it disturbs what's still unhealed in others. So what happens? You get pushed away, not because you've done anything wrong, but because you feel too right, too clear, too honest, too real. And realness is terrifying to those still living in illusion. It's a painful paradox. The deeper your empathy, the more you're misunderstood, because people can't comprehend the layers you're tuning into. They only see the surface, but you see the whole ocean. And that's exhausting, isn't it? Because while everyone else is living on autopilot, you're out here processing everything. Every glance, every word, every pause in a conversation, every shift in tone. You're decoding the emotional language of the world, and most people don't even realize you're fluent in something they can't hear. That's why we burn out. That's why we isolate. That's why sometimes the only peace we feel is when we're alone. Because it's the only time we're not carrying other people's emotional debris. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt more exhausted after a conversation than after running a marathon? That's not social anxiety. That's energetic overload. And if you don't learn how to manage it, it will steal your joy, your clarity, and your health. So, what do? First, we have to get brutally honest about our emotional boundaries, not the vague kind, the soul-level kind. We need to stop romanticizing empathy as self-sacrifice. We need to stop calling codependency love. We need to stop being emotional shock absorbers for people who refuse to grow. Just because you can feel someone doesn't mean you should carry them. You have to learn how to identify what's yours and what's theirs. You have to become a master of energetic separation. Here's a simple practice. Before you engage with anyone, especially someone heavy, ground yourself. Ask, is this mine to hold? If the answer is no, then bless it, witness it, but do not take it in. You are not helping anyone by drowning in their ocean. Second, You need to take your nervous system seriously. Your body is the vessel for your gift, and if it's constantly in fight or flight because of the emotional chaos you're absorbing, your gift will become a prison. You need rituals. You need stillness. You need nature. You need music that calms your spirit. You need to discharge the energy that's not yours before it becomes an illness. Empaths don't just get emotionally drained, we get physically sick. Why? Because suppressed energy turns into symptoms, headaches, fatigue, gut issues, chronic anxiety. That's not random. That's your soul saying you're carrying too much. And if you don't listen, your body will scream what your spirit has been whispering all along. Third, and maybe most importantly, you need to stop waiting for people to understand you. That's the hardest part, I know, because we all want to be seen. We all want to be met in our depth. We all want to feel like someone gets us without us having to explain. But here's the truth. Most people won't, and that has nothing to do with your value. It has everything to do with their capacity. You aren't misunderstood because you're broken. You're misunderstood because your depth requires presence, and presence is rare. So instead of waiting to be understood, start understanding yourself. Start validating your own experience. Start trusting your own intuition. Start honoring your own energy. Because the more you trust your gift, the less you need external permission to use it. And when you do that, when you finally choose yourself over being understood, you begin to magnetize people who feel like home. People who speak your language. People who don't drain you. People who don't need you to explain your soul because they've met theirs. That's when the loneliness ends. That's when the real tribe finds you, but not before. You have to walk through the fire of being misunderstood before you find the ones who see through smoke. So I'll leave you with this question. What would your life look like if you stopped trying to be understood by people who were never meant to hold your truth? What kind of peace would you feel if you stopped carrying what was never yours to begin with? Because you were never here to fix everyone. You were never here to absorb the world's pain. You were here to transmute it, to feel it, understand it, but then alchemize it into wisdom, into compassion, into clarity, into truth. That's the real gift of the Empath Chosen One, not to suffer, but to illuminate. And the world will understand you one day, but by then you'll already be long gone. Not out of bitterness, but because you finally realized that your energy was never meant to be background noise. It was meant to be sacred sound heard by those who have ears to feel. There comes a moment in the empath's journey that no one warns you about. It's not loud. It doesn't come with fireworks. It's not a breakdown or a scream or a fight. It's quiet, subtle, almost invisible. It's the moment you realize you're done. Not with love, not with life, but with carrying people who never saw you. With giving your soul to those who only ever touched your surface. With trying to explain your depth to those addicted to the shallow end. This moment, it's sacred. It's not an escape, it's a return to yourself, a return to boundaries that don't apologize, a return to peace that doesn't beg for permission, a return to the truth you've always known but were too loyal to fully claim. Not everyone deserves access to your energy. You see, the Empath Chosen One is not just misunderstood because of what we feel, but because of what we won't say. We've been silent witnesses to other people's pain for years. We've held space while they screamed, cried, lied, and projected, and we held it all with love. We didn't retaliate, we didn't expose them. We didn't shame them. But we knew, we always knew. We knew the truth behind their anger, the fear behind their ego, the trauma behind their manipulation, the sadness behind their cruelty. We saw it all and chose to love them anyway. Not because we're weak, but because we understand. But understanding someone doesn't mean you stay where you're not valued. It doesn't mean you allow their unhealed wounds to keep cutting you. It doesn't mean you become a martyr for their growth. There comes a time, an inner knowing, when you realize that staying any longer would be abandoning yourself. And that's the moment you leave. But here's the thing. When we leave, we don't make a scene. We don't burn the bridge. We don't curse their name. We just disappear. Slowly, quietly, spiritually. Because we're not seeking revenge. We're seeking relief. We're not trying to punish. We're trying to preserve. And it's only after we're gone that they finally begin to feel us. Not our physical presence, but our absence. The space we held, the peace we brought, the way they felt seen around us in a way they never could name. And that's when the regret sets in. That's when the awakening begins, but by then it's too late. Because what they thought was just who we are was actually a gift, a rare frequency, a spiritual medicine they didn't know how to hold. And when the medicine leaves, the sickness returns, not as punishment, but as revelation. Let me ask you something deep. How many times have you stayed in places that were slowly killing your light just because you didn't want to hurt someone else's feelings? How many times have you silenced your truth to protect someone else's illusion? How many times have you tolerated emotional immaturity in the name of empathy? That's not compassion. That's self-abandonment, and we've all done it. We've all mistaken loyalty for love. We've all confused patience with purpose. We've all stayed too long in the name of potential. But potential is just a promise. It's not a guarantee. And you can't keep sacrificing your peace on the altar of someone else's maybe. The Empath Chosen One must learn a harder love, a deeper wisdom. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is leave, not because you don't care, but because you do. You care about your health, your energy, your calling, your purpose. You care about the sacred role you've been given to be a mirror, a healer, a seer. And that role demands clarity, not confusion. It demands alignment, not appeasement. It demands truth. And here's what happens when you finally walk away from what no longer serves your spirit. You start to feel yourself again. You laugh differently. You breathe deeper. You sleep better. You start making decisions that nourish you instead of deplete you. You stop second-guessing your intuition. You stop explaining your empathy. You stop performing for people who never had the capacity to receive the real you. You start creating. You start connecting. You start attracting people who don't just want your light, but who reciprocate it. And most of all, you start healing. Not just from what they did, but from what you tolerate, from the guilt of leaving, from the shame of being too much, from the belief that love had to be earned by how much pain you could hold. You start healing from your own misunderstanding of yourself. Because here's the secret no one tells you. It was never your job to be understood by everyone. That's not your purpose. Your purpose is to understand yourself so deeply that you stop needing to be validated by those who can't even see their own reflection. And when you do that, when you finally come home to your own energy, you become magnetic, not in a loud, flashy way, but in an undeniable, grounded, soul-rooted way. People feel it. They don't know why, but they feel safe around you, seen, held, not because you're trying, but because you've become a living sanctuary. But you only become that version of you after you leave. So the next time someone says you're too sensitive, too emotional, too complicated, remember, you are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to be felt deeply by the few who are brave enough to sit in the fire of truth with you. And if that means you have to walk alone for a season, so be it. Because walking alone in your truth is 1,000 times more powerful than sitting in a room full of people who only love your mask. So again, I ask you, what are you still holding on to that's costing you your peace? Who are you still trying to explain yourself to, knowing they've never really listened? What are you afraid will happen if you finally choose yourself fully for the first time in your life? Because once you do, once you make that sacred departure, not only do you free yourself, but you also give them the greatest gift of all, the mirror of your absence. And that mirror? It speaks louder than anything you could have said with words. They'll feel it, oh, they'll feel it, but by then, you'll be long gone. Not bitter, not broken, just free.